Good morning. It is good to be with you today here in the sanctuary or whether you're watching from home. It's so good for all of us to be together. And as we settle into our time of worship together for this month's second exploration of our Soul Matters theme, Embracing Possibility, I offer these words by the Unitarian Universalist minister, Reverend Gretchen Haley. May they help center our minds and our hearts this morning. What's going to happen? Will everything be okay? What can I do? In these days, we find ourselves too often stuck with these questions on repeat. What's going to happen? Will everything be okay? What can I do? We grasp at signs and markers, articles of news and analysis, Facebook memes and forwarded emails, as if the new zodiac capable of forecasting all that life may yet bring our way. As if we could prepare. As if life had ever made any promises of making sense or turning out the way we'd thought. As if we are not also actors in this unfolding story. For this hour we gather to surrender to the mystery, to release ourselves from the needing to know, the yearning to have it all already figured out, and also the burden of believing we either have all of the control or none. Here in our song and our silence, our stories and our sharing, we make space for a new breath, a new healing, a new possibility to take root. That is courage forged in the fire of our coming together and felt in the spirit that comes alive in this act of faith, that we believe still a new world is possible, that we are creating it already here and now. So come, my friends. Come, those of you who are gathered here in the sanctuary in person with us, and those of you who are gathered with us online. Let's worship together.
Good morning. The flaming chalice is the symbol of the Unitarian Universalist tradition, the liberal religious tradition to which this congregation belongs. I invite you to rise as you're able for the lighting of our chalice. If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to light it with me at this time. Will you please join me in reciting the words on the screen? As we kindle this flame, we recommit ourselves to the mission of this congregation, to build a Unitarian Universalist that transforms lives and empowers people to serve the world. May the light of this flame be welcoming to all who seek a liberal religious home. Please be seated. Our opening hymn this morning is number 1000, Morning Has Come. Because of the risks posed by congregational singing, we won't sing together this morning, but John and Diane will sing for us.
Come, arise and greet the day. Dance with joy and sing a song of gladness. The light of hope here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to chart our journey home. Once more the gift is given. Wonder fills this moment shared together. The light of peace here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. That life abounds, open hearts to welcome it among us. The light of hope here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home.
Hello again. I'm Josh Schaefer, a worship associate and a member of this congregation. If you're visiting us for the first time this morning, either in person or online, we'd like to offer you a special welcome. Here at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Raleigh, we are intentionally inclusive, liberally religious, and actively serving the common good of our shared world. Whoever you are and wherever you are on your religious journey, you're welcome here. As Unitarian Universalists, we seek wisdom and inspiration from many sources, but affirm that our own individual experience and conscience is the best authority for our beliefs. And we believe the purpose of religion is to help us live the most fully within this lifetime. We're also committed to making our world a more compassionate and just place, and hope you might join in one of our many efforts to do so. If you're visiting us for the first time and haven't already done so, I invite you to stop by our visitor stand after the service. It's immediately outside the sanctuary doors. If you're visiting us for the first time online, I invite you to fill out our visitor form at www.uufr.org/visitor form. If you do this, you'll start receiving our weekly e-newsletter. I hope all of you had a chance to read through the chalice you received by email on Thursday about everything happening here at UU. Let me highlight a few items. Our next congregational picnic will be Sunday, October the 3rd, after the service at Pullen Park. This outdoor activity is for all ages. We'll have an intergenerational gathering, activities for children, and a kickball game for everyone. Reverend James's 6th session class, A Liberal Religious Path, an Introduction to Unitarian Universalism, is beginning on October the 6th. The class will provide an overview of the Unitarian Universalist history and its values. And our annual auction fundraiser is now collecting donations through October the 18th. Our theme this year is the Roaring Twenties, and all kinds of donations are accepted. You can plan to host a social event, offer to help with chores, collaborate on a theme basket, get crafty, plan family activities, prepare homemade goodies, or whatever else you can imagine. More information about these and countless other great activities is available in our Chalice e-newsletter and on our website, uufr.org. For those of you here in person, our social hour this morning will be outside on our upper fellowship hall patio. After you get your coffee, feel free to remain on the patio or wander down to the lower courtyard or memorial garden, but please remember to socially distance as you enjoy your beverages. Since we're not on Zoom and don't have our names below our faces, please remember to wear your name tag. Name tag racks are now in the lower entryway. For everybody online, feel free to join us for our online social hour immediately after the service. There's instructions on how to do this on our website. I now invite you to meet and greet each other. As a gentle reminder, out of an abundance of caution, we're refraining for the time from hugs or handshakes, but we encourage you to greet each other with a wave, a nod, or a hello. For everybody at home, please do so using the chat function on your screen.
There's going to be plenty of time to continue those conversations during social hour. This is the time in our service when we acknowledge some of the joys and the sorrows of our community. Anyone is invited to email a joy or sorrow to joysandsorrows@uufr.org before 9 a.m. on Sunday. And anyone is also invited to light a candle and fill out a card before our service. And folks at home may also share a joy or sorrow using the chat function on your screen. I'll share some of the joys and sorrows that I've received now. This morning, I lit a special candle for Mary Fulmer, a UUFR member who died on Wednesday. May we hold Jennifer, Mary's daughter, as well as the rest of her family in our thoughts and our prayers. And details about a memorial service will be released later. Jay Gudeman shares the sorrow that hospice has let him know that his father is in the beginning stages of dying. Jay, we hold you in our hearts during this difficult time. John and Dana Maddox share that this time has been very stressful for their family. They are deeply saddened by the unexpected loss of their brother-in-law, S. Thomas Parker. They ask that we help them in sending comfort and healing energy to John's sister Mary and their niece Grace in this time of great loss and sorrow. And they also ask that we hold their daughter, Kira, and their son-in-law, Damun, and their grandchildren, Ariana and Cyrus, in our hearts. Damun's mother, Brenda, is in the hospital and gravely ill. Please join us in sending strength and healing energy to Brenda and her family. Lastly, they would like us to hold up their overwhelming gratitude that their entire local family is fully vaccinated and neither of these sorrows that they have are COVID-related. As we reflect on these shared joys and sorrows, as well as those joys and sorrows and fears and hopes of our own lives, let's be together now for a time of stillness and silence, opening ourselves up to that spirit between us, within us, and amidst us, called by many names, but known to every human heart, that leads us toward a fuller experience of life. After the silence, we will remain seated and listen to Diane and John sing hymn number 1009, Meditation on Breathing, but for now, let's be together in stillness and in silence.
I'll breathe out love when I breathe in. I'll breathe in peace when I breathe out. I'll breathe out love when I breathe in. I'll breathe in peace when I breathe out. I'll breathe out love.
Audrey Hepburn once said, "You will discover you have two hands. One's for helping yourself, and the other is for helping others." Much of what we do here at UUFR to help and care for ourselves, one another, our wider community, and the world is only possible because of the generous financial gifts that so many of you provide. This morning, instead of passing our baskets, if you'd like to make a donation, please come forward and leave your donation in one of the baskets up front. It's also possible to give using one of the methods posted on our screen.
Thank you for your music. Our first reading this morning is by Howard Zinn. To be hopeful in bad times is not foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. If we remember those times and places, and there are so many, where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act, and at least the possibility of sending this spinning top of a world in a different direction. And if we do act, in however small a way, we don't have to wait for some grand utopian future. The future is an endless succession of presents, and to live now as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is itself a marvelous victory. Our second reading is from the Hebrew Bible, from Deuteronomy Chapter 30, verses 11 through 20. In it, the Israelites have been wandering the desert for 40 years after the profound trauma of slavery in Egypt. And now they are preparing to enter the Promised Land and begin new lives as a new community. The prophet Moses, who has been leading them with his brother and his sister during their wandering time, speaks to them of the possibilities now before them. He says, "Now what I am commanding you today is not too difficult for you or beyond your reach. It is not up in heaven, so that you have to ask, who will ascend to heaven to get it and proclaim it to us so that we may obey it? Nor is it beyond the sea, so that you have to ask, who will cross the sea to get it and proclaim it to us so that we may obey it? No, the word is very near you. It is in your mouth and in your heart so that you may obey it. See, I set before you today life and prosperity, death and destruction. For I command you today to love the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, and to keep his commands, decrees, and laws, that you will live and increase. And the Lord your God will bless your land that you are entering to possess. But if your heart turns away and you are not obedient, and if you draw away to bow down to other gods and worship them, I declare to you this day that you will certainly be destroyed. You will not live long in the land you are crossing the Jordan to enter and possess. This day I call on the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life, so that you and your children may live and that you may love the Lord your God, listen to his voice, and hold fast to him. For the Lord is your life, and he will give you many years in the land he swore to give to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And finally, in our third reading this morning, the Unitarian Universalist minister, Reverend Rebecca Parker, offers a liberal religious way of thinking about this ancient text and the idea about making choices as people of faith between life and death, blessings and curses. She writes, "Your gifts, whatever you discover them to be, can be used to bless or curse the world. The mind's power, the strength of the hands, the reaches of the heart, the gift of speaking, listening, imagining, seeing, waiting, any of these can serve to feed the hungry, bind up wounds, welcome the stranger, praise what is sacred, do the work of justice, or offer love. And any of these can draw down the prison door, hoard bread, abandon the poor, obscure what is holy, comply with injustice, or withhold love. You must answer this question: what will you do with your gifts?" Despite myself, I've always kind of liked the story that I shared with you earlier. And to be sure, the story has its problems, like many ancient stories told in a time far bloodier than our own. And yet it also has something of value for civilizations like ours today, modern civilizations that have to grapple with our immense destructive power, a power that makes the scale of violence we are capable of, makes the biblical violence pale in comparison. Modern civilizations that also, despite our capacity for immense evil, have the power to build a bright tomorrow if we so choose. In the story, the ancient Israelites hover at the threshold of a new life for their community after many years of slavery in Egypt. They are aware of that the kind of community they will become in the future depends on them and no other. The divine, they are told, has placed a variety of options before them that they might pursue, a collection of blessings and of curses, gifts that they can freely select and use to shape the future however they want. But the work of choosing and of shaping that future lies in their own hands. They're told that in order to know what to do to create that future, they don't need some far-off vision to guide them. The knowledge of what to do to build the future they want for their people lies in their own hearts and in their own hands. And so they wait at the precipice of opportunity, blessings and curses before them. And so do we. And part of why I like the story that I shared earlier is because of how it differs from some of the many other stories told in the Bible about various Hebrew prophets. That line in there, that line about the knowledge of what to do being in one's own heart, not up in the sky or up in some distant land. That is some pretty radical stuff. It's pretty different than the way prophets are sometimes understood in the Hebrew Bible. And understand what's a bit different about that version of a prophet. It helps to know the story of Abraham and Sarah in the king's court. And I'm not talking about the familiar story about the couple in Pharaoh's court, but a very similar and less known story that shows up just a few pages later. And so in the later story, the husband and wife duo are up to their old tricks again. They're like this biblical heist team taking kings for all they're worth. And the con is familiar. The setup: pretend once again to be sister and brother instead of husband and wife. And they send in Sarah, apparently a seductress every bit as capable as the heroines in every spy flick ever. She then uses her feminine wiles to catch the vile king's eye and infiltrate the royal household. And when he brings her into his household, the couple plans to use God's wrath over the impending adultery to sabotage the king's government, family, and land. Then they will leverage that whole mess like a hostage situation to shake that king down for a ton of loot. And by the time Sarah and Abraham are done with him, that king will be willing to pay them a king's ransom, you might say, to just get that crafty couple out of his hair and their God off of his back. And finally, that dynamic duo will waltz off into the night with their ill-gotten gains, ready to take the next king for all he's worth. At least that's how the heist was supposed to go. It's how it worked earlier with Pharaoh. And they've got it down to a routine. But this time, their clever plan is thwarted by a mole, a divine mole, God himself, who gave the king a kind of holy tip-off to help him escape the setup. And as the story goes, one night, while the king lay dreaming, God sent him a vision. In the vision, God revealed the whole nasty scheme and warned him of the trap that Abraham and Sarah had set for him. He said, "They're actually husband and wife. You cannot bring her into your household." And so the king didn't fall for it. Because God gave him a clear vision of the future, he was able to find a way out of the mess he was in. He was able to avoid calamity and keep the scheming couple from making off with half his royal treasury. And as you can probably tell, I find this story pretty amusing, but at the same time, that whole part about what prophetic visions by God look like, well, interesting, also kind of disappoints me. I mean, sure, it's super interesting to hear a story in which God saves a foreign king from God's own followers. That's kind of a fun way to flip the script that we're used to. But the manner in which the king is saved, that troubles me. Because in real life, the vast majority of the time, we receive no heavenly visions to guide us out of trouble when it comes knocking on our door. We get no divine tip-off in our dreams, laying out in great detail the course the future will take if specific things are done or are not done. We receive no assurance of success or failure in our endeavors either. No certainty that a path that we are considering embarking upon will lead us without fail to where we want it to go. We all move through a sea of possibilities, not a sea of certainties. And sometimes, knowing that, it's amazing that we're able to make any choices at all. Life would be a lot easier to navigate if we were all seers, if we were all recipients of prophetic dreams that guide us unfailingly toward the better world that we dream of. And yet we're not those kinds of prophets. We're not seers. We're more like mirrors, prophetic mirrors. To illustrate, I've got a story for you, and I hope you like stories because it seems that this morning is story time with Sasha. The story of the prophetic mirror goes like this. There once was a little child who loved exploring the countryside. One day, wandering farther than normal, the child came upon a beautiful lake underneath the mountain with calm, crystal clear waters. And as the child gazed into the lake and saw the reflection of the mountain, something very strange happened. The water rippled, and a silver-handled mirror bobbed up to the surface. And shocked, the child lifted the mirror dripping from the water and gazed into the smooth glass. And the mirror reflected back the child's own face, but not like the child had ever seen before. This face shone with such bravery, such kindness, and such knowledge. And heart, filled with wonder, the child carried the mirror home. The child returned home just as bells chimed through the village, summoning everyone to town hall. And sighing because meetings were boring, the child went to the meeting house and slouched down onto a bench between mother and father. Soon the meeting started and the adults began blathering on and on about something called a coal mine and how it might bring prosperity to the village. The child yawned, fingertips tapping the mirror in boredom, and looked around for something more interesting. And there was a window framing the nearby green mountain. The child had always so loved that mountain. And the child lifted the mirror, curious what it might show, and gasped. In the mirror, the top of the mountain had been sawed off and blackened. And horrified, the child lowered the mirror again and stared at the adults and listened to them discuss the coal mine. Would the mine do that horrible thing to the mountain? I must do something, the child whispered, but the thought was also very scary because adults often got angry when children interrupted. But then the child remembered looking into the mirror earlier and seeing a face shining with bravery, kindness, and knowledge, the child's own face. I must say something. Taking a deep breath, the child stood up on the bench. "You cannot open this mine!" And people turned to stare. "Don't be rude," Mother hissed, and Father just gave a stern frown. "You cannot open this mine," the child said again, even louder this time. "I love the mountain, and look what might happen to it if you open the mine there. Look!" And the child lifted the mirror. And the villagers looked into the mirror and gasped as different possible futures flashed across the mirror's surface. First, they saw the coal mine being built and shiny gold coins raining down on the village, along with thick black soot. The skies darkened with smog, and people coughed miserably as they breathed in the dirty air, but the people had money and nice things that they could buy with that money. The villagers cried out at what they saw, and then the mirror showed another possible future. This time, no shiny gold coins fell down on the village, and no thick black soot either. The skies were blue and free of smog, and the rivers were crystal clear and sweet. In the village, people went on with their daily lives, happy and healthy enough, even though they were not rich. Sometimes times were hard, and they didn't have what they needed to get by. But they did have the beauty of the mountain, their health, and one another. The mirror shows possibilities of what may come to be, the child told the quiet villagers as those images faded. But you must choose which to make real, so please choose wisely. And then the villagers voted. Even the child with the mirror was given a chance to help choose the future. As the votes were counted, the child lifted the mirror and peeked within. Both possibilities were still there in the glass, the coins and the soot, the health and the hardship, the leveled mountain and the green peak. But the child smiled and lowered the mirror, because the future was never certain, never sure to be good or bad. All we can do is use our bravery, our kindness, and our knowledge right now to try to do the best we can to choose wisely from what's right in front of us. And outside the window, that green mountain filled the panes, clean and untouched. It was a beacon of hope. So when you and I think about what it means to be a prophet, the child in this story is probably not the kind of person who comes to mind. I know that when I personally think about what a prophet might be like, I think of someone more like the king that I mentioned earlier, someone important in a position of power and who has a direct line to God. Someone who hears God's voice in dreams and visions from on high and is told in no unclear terms which way to go. I don't think of some ordinary person simply holding up a mirror and taking a closer look at the world around them and the things that they most love. And when I think about what a prophet is, I also tend to think of someone who is sent as a messenger to deliver someone else's wisdom, to declare someone else's will, usually God's will. I don't usually think of a prophet as someone sharing their own wisdom and declaring their own desires. But it is refreshing and also more useful to think of prophets as people like that little child with the mirror in the story. Just regular people like you and me, taking a close look at the world around us and speaking up and acting on what we notice. Prophets, real prophets, are ordinary people with no special powers or perfect divine knowledge of the future. Just our own human knowledge of our own hearts and the world around us, and our very human powers of kindness and courage. Real prophets have no dreams of God thundering down from on high about what path is best to take. Real prophets just have our own clarity about what we love here and now in our lives, our desire to try to make wise choices to protect and preserve those things we love, and our willingness to speak up about what we care about, even to those more powerful than us. In fact, especially to those more powerful than us. Real prophets are ordinary people who hold up a mirror to society and to the powers that be. A mirror that confronts us with the truth of ourselves right here and now and the possible consequences, good or bad, of our current actions. A mirror that also reveals many possibilities that we can act on. And the possible consequences of our actions are rarely guaranteed and often are super messy, really complicated. Unlike the clear, cut-out consequences outlined in so many stories about prophets, real consequences in the real world are usually less certain and way more convoluted. There is no sign saying, this way and only this way to life, and that way and only that way to nothing but death. The paths actually twist and they turn, and sometimes life and death can be found along each. Each choice we're presented with gives us a bouquet of possibilities. In there we have a whole hodgepodge of great and good, bad and awful consequences, sometimes all wrapped up in a single bundle. And real prophets hold up the mirror to remind us of the concrete things before us, right here and now, especially those things that can help guide us in embracing the best possibilities. What do we pay attention to when we hold up the prophetic mirror? Things like what we care about the most, about our deepest values, our strongest priorities. about our knowledge of a thing or two that in our experience we know can help protect and preserve the things that we love the most, about a few choices before us that can help move us towards or away from our values and our priorities. And all of that is shown in the prophetic mirror that we hold up to society. But what is not shown is a guarantee of success, or for that matter, a guarantee of failure. And so how do we go about the hard work of navigating through all these options that were shown when it's sometimes not clear which is the best, in order to make wise choices in our complex, imperfect, and uncertain world? One of my colleagues recently said something about how she navigates the important choices in her life when there are no perfect answers and no guarantees of success. She said that in such times she considers what will serve her own and others' most fundamental humanity, their deepest and most authentic humanity. And then she tries to make the best choices available to her at that time that does just that, that upholds that fundamental humanity. And the choice she feels does the best job, even if it's not perfect, of supporting her and others as a whole people, that is the one that she takes. She doesn't have to know the outcome of every single choice before she takes it, or be assured that her efforts will undoubtedly always turn out the way that she hopes. She only has to keep her own and other people's deepest humanity in front and center before her in the choices that she's making, and then release the rest to the universe. And she trusts that even if the future she hopes does not come into being, simply by living that way, pieces of it will come into being as she strives one step at a time to pursue it. Another friend uses a similar approach when making choices with justice implications. My friend has worked for years with people living in poverty, and he does a great deal to support folks in dire circumstances. And one thing he does is accept donations so that he can purchase shoes for people who badly need them, people in the community that he supports. Now, he has a couple options. He can buy a lot of shoes on the cheap, but he knows that doing so risks harming impoverished workers overseas, because the cheap cost of a shoe here is often only possible because of worker exploitation someplace else. That road isn't a blessing or a curse, it's kind of a bit of both. And alternately, he knows he can take another path, and he can buy a few shoes from fair trade companies and pay living wages. But those shoes are more expensive, and so he can't buy as many shoes to meet the needs of the people he cares for. Some feet would continue to go without shoes. That road, too, isn't a blessing or a curse. It's like the first possibility, kind of a combination of both. And yet he has to choose what path he's going to take, or no shoes are placed on feet at all of the folks relying on him. Inaction is still, after all, a choice that has consequences. And none of these options are perfect, because this is the real world. There is no path purely of blessings and life, and another path purely of curses and death. And there is no seer with a divine voice whispering in their ear, telling what path to take to build a better world. There's only my friend, someone who cares deeply about the people that he serves and the imperfect choices that are set before him. And so what he does is he embraces the possibility that he believes will best help the people in his circle of care, the people he's in relationship with and that he's accountable to. That is the priority that he has chosen to center in his life. And so he buys the inexpensive shoes, the best choice for the community he serves, even if not the best choice for the workers who make the shoes. And he finds other ways to support the rights of workers around the world. And my friend is guided in making the most just choice for him and for those he serves because he's held up that mirror to the world. He's held it up and he's seen in it interdependence and interlocking systems of oppression. He sees in the mirror his own loves and priorities and the options before him to attend to them now. He does not see any divine guarantees of success or any guarantees that he is doing the one and only right thing. He doesn't see any guarantees there either that he will be able to completely and totally escape doing any harm. He just sees his own kindness, his knowledge, and his courage in the face of imperfection and uncertainty. My friends, Reverend James reminded us in his sermon a couple weeks ago that there are few things in life that are certain, few expectations that we might have of the future that life is obliged to meet. So we must let go of our need for certainty and our rigid expectations of the future to free our hands to embrace what is possible here and now in the present. That applies both to our individual lives and also to our collective lives together as a community trying to serve the world. So let's hold our future in a gentler grip to make room in our hands to embrace the possibilities among us here and now, to live in a better world, one choice at a time. And next week, Reverend James will be talking about some of the choices that are before us here and now to make our community here in Raleigh and in Wake County a better place. A place that more deeply embodies our deepest held values. So I hope that you will join us next week for that important message. But for now, the time has come for our closing hymn. And our closing hymn this morning is number 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. And I invite you to remain seated, and if you'd like, hum along.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, when our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our stories from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
is time now for us to bring our time of worship to a close. But as we extinguish this chalice flame, its light will continue to burn in our hearts. As we go out into our daily lives, let's remember the words of the Unitarian Universalist minister, Reverend Michael Schuler, who served as my own teaching minister at the First Unitarian Society of Madison, where I did my internship a few years ago. We have reached the end of this time for the gathering of memory and for letting the imagination play with future possibilities. We've enjoyed magical moments and edified each other. Shall it be concluded then? Or will this adventure, now commenced, continue? Our separate paths, converging, meeting, merging in the unending quest of love more perfect, the joyous struggle for meaning more sufficient, and life more abundant. Is this ending to be an ending or merely prelude to new, more glorious beginnings? I pose the question. In your heart lies the answer. Go in peace.